In the twilight of the 1930s, the world stood on a precipice.
The embers of one great war had not yet cooled, but already the winds of conflict were stirring once more.
A shadow was falling across the globe, a darkness born from unresolved grievances, economic desperation, and the terrifying rise of ideologies that celebrated power over peace. This is the story of the Second World War, a conflict that would engulf continents, shatter empires, and redefine the very course of human history. Our story begins in the ashes of the First World War. The Treaty of Versailles, intended to bring lasting peace, instead sowed seeds of resentment. In Germany, economic collapse and national humiliation created a fertile ground for extremism. A charismatic and dangerous leader rose from the chaos, promising to restore national pride and power. Through massive rallies, hypnotic speeches, and the chilling spectacle of military parades, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party consolidated their grip on Germany. Silencing dissent and forging a formidable war machine, the world watched, uneasy. As the storm clouds gathered over Europe, on September 1, 1939, the storm broke. German forces invaded Poland, unleashing a new and terrifying form of warfare, the Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. Waves of bombers decimated cities, while columns of tanks and infantry punched through defenses with brutal speed and efficiency. Britain and France, honoring their alliance with Poland, declared war on Germany, but it was too little, too late. The dominoes began to fall. Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg were swiftly overrun. By the summer of 1940, the unthinkable happened. France, a cornerstone of Allied power, surrendered. The chilling images of German soldiers marching down the Champs-Élysées in Paris sent a shockwave. Across the world, Britain now stood alone. An island fortress bracing for invasion, the Battle of Britain commenced in the skies over England. Day after day, the Royal Air Force clashed with the German Luftwaffe in desperate dogfights. At night, the Blitz rained fire upon London and other cities, but the spirit of the British people, huddled in shelters and defiant amidst the ruins, did not break. The invasion was held off. A crucial first victory for the Allies. Frustrated in the West, Hitler turned his attention eastward. In June 1941, he launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion of the Soviet Union. It was a betrayal of a non-aggression pact and the beginning of the largest and deadliest front of the war. Millions of soldiers clashed across a vast, unforgiving landscape. The German advance was relentless at first, reaching the outskirts of Moscow. But the brutal Russian winter, a foe that had defeated conquerors before, ground the offensive to a halt. The turning point on the Eastern Front came in the ruined city of Stalingrad. In a battle of unprecedented savagery and attrition, the Soviet Red Army encircled and destroyed the German Sixth Army. It was a catastrophic defeat for Germany, one from which they would never fully recover. Meanwhile, conflict had erupted in the Pacific. Imperial Japan, driven by its own expansionist ambitions, sought to dominate Asia. On December 7, 1941, in a surprise attack that would live in infamy, Japanese naval aircraft struck the American Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The assault was devastating, plunging the United States into the war. The conflict now truly was a global one. The early months saw a string of Japanese victories, but the tide began to turn at sea. Key naval battles, like Midway, crippled the Japanese fleet and shifted the strategic initiative to the Allies. Across the globe, the Axis powers were now on the defensive. In North Africa, Allied forces pushed German and Italian troops back, securing the Mediterranean. In Italy, Allied landings led to the downfall of Mussolini. The fortress Europe that Hitler had built was beginning to crack. The final phase of the war in Europe was being planned, the largest amphibious invasion in history. On June 6, 1940, 40-day the liberation of Western Europe began. Under the cover of darkness and a massive naval bombardment, Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy in France. The fighting was ferocious, the casualties immense, but the soldiers pushed inland, establishing a foothold that the Germans could not dislodge. A new front was opened, and the race to Berlin was on. As Allied forces advanced across Europe, they uncovered the war's most profound and sickening secret. In camps bearing names like Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Bergen-Belsen, the Nazi regime had perpetrated the Holocaust, the systematic, industrial-scale murder of 6 million Jews and millions of other victims, including Romani people, Poles, political prisoners, and others deemed undesirable. The silent, empty barracks, the tangles of barbed wire, and the piles of abandoned belongings stand as a permanent, harrowing testament to the depths of human cruelty. It is a horror we must never forget. The end in Europe came in the spring of 1945. Allied armies closed in on Germany from the west, while the Soviets advanced relentlessly from the east. The final battle took place in the rubble-strewn streets of Berlin. On April 30th, with Soviet soldiers just blocks away from his bunker, Hitler took his own life. A week later, Germany surrendered unconditionally. Victory in Europe was declared, but the war was not yet over. In the Pacific, the fighting raged on. The United States faced the daunting prospect of a full-scale invasion of the Japanese home islands, an operation certain to cost millions of lives on both sides. To force a surrender and avoid this catastrophic outcome, President Harry Truman made a fateful decision on August 6, 1945. An American bomber dropped a single atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima 3 days later. A second bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. The devastation was absolute. Faced with this unimaginable power, Japan announced its surrender on August 15th, officially ending World War II. The world that emerged from the rubble was forever changed. Empires had crumbled, borders were redrawn, and new global powers had risen. Over 70 million people were dead. The war left scars on the landscape and on the human soul that would take generations to heal. From the ashes, new institutions like the United Nations were created, born from a desperate hope that such a catastrophe would never happen again. The memory of the war serves as a solemn reminder of the price of hatred, the cost of apathy, and the courage of those who fought for a better world. We remember them. Forward the lesson that peace is not given, but must be diligently and tirelessly built by us all. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.